All right, hello everybody, and we are at our last session of the church series, God's plan to change the world. And in this last section, we talked about how God wants to bring power beyond our routines. Church can be such a routine so often, and so our problem this week is that routines are so routine. The routines can steal the power of what God is doing in our lives and take the heart right out of it. And so we just go through the motions, and we do not want that problem of routines. We want God's power beyond those routines. The nutshell of this week, the nutshell point was a little bit of a rhyme. So it was routines with no reason are spiritual treason. And routines with heart start worship machines. So we don't want to commit this spiritual treason and have our routines completely reasonless, not knowing why we're doing what we're doing, not seeing God's hand in it, not having a relationship with God as we do these things. We want to actually start worship machines within the routines. We don't have to ditch the routines. We have to give heart back to those routines. And that's what God wants for us, because he actually calls us to many routines. So number one, what we talked about was habits, good, bad, and ugly. Bad habits tend to be everything from, think about it, overeating, alcoholism. There's all sorts of habits you can get into that are bad, but we don't want those. We want good habits. And when we have good habits, like going to church, that's a great thing. However, when we can make those good habits ugly when we actually start losing the heart behind those good habits. We're just getting up and going through the motions, and that's an ugly habit. We don't want that. So we looked at what those are and how God really does not like for us to just simply go through the motions while our hearts are far from him, as our Isaiah 29 passage said. So instead, we want to put heart back in our habits. That's point number 2, habits with heart. And we read John 4, where we read that Jesus wants worshipers who will worship him in spirit and truth. And in doing so, we need to aim our hearts back to God. We need to put our hearts back into it, and we need to know the gospel reasons why we're doing it. It's about relationship with God. It's about what God has done for us and our worship of him. And so we don't go to church just to tick off a box. We don't read our Bible just to tick off a box. We do these things to connect with our God. And so we need to aim for the heart and bring that back in. And number 3, we want to have a situation in which we love worship, or we heart worship, since we kind of have a heart theme here. And we want to bring our hearts back in. And how do we do that? Well, we can do that partially by simply asking ourselves why we're doing what we're doing. As we get up in the morning and go to church, we can wake up and not just think, oh man, I don't want to do it, but say, why do I do this? And we remember what God has called us to, that God has called us to be a part of his amazing church, that he is changing the world through, and he is changing us. And he wants us to be a part of this pattern, but he wants us to come into it with heart. So we wake up, we think about the gospel reasons why. God died for me. I am his. I belong to him. This is my new identity. He has a plan for me, and it has to do with his church. I want to be there. I want to be a part of it. I want to learn. I want to grow, and I want to serve others, and I want to change the world. And we bring the heart back into worship. We heart worship. I hope you enjoyed this series. We do have our question and answer time this next Sunday, and that will be the last of the church series. Take it with you. Do not forget what you've learned. Go back and rehash, completely discuss these things and get them deep into your heart and mind, because God's church is his plan to save the world.